All right, welcome back to Behind the Scenes with Bourbon. I am here with one of my neighbors, one of the really great young guys in Congress, Jake Auchincloss from Massachusetts. And let's just dive right into it. You just had your third child. How's it going?
3 kids and a dog, and thankfully we got grandparents nearby.
3 under 3 is insane, by the way.
And a Labrador. Don't forget the dog.
Yeah.
She's actually the most emotionally needy of any of them.
How old is the dog?
The dog is 7, so she preceded the other 3, and she knows it.
Right.
And my wife works full time. I'm back and forth. They live in Massachusetts. So we rely a lot on grandparents. We rely a lot on NyQuil. We rely a lot on just support from friends and family to make it work, like all working parents do.
Yeah, my wife works full time. We have 3 as well. We go between 5 and 12, so a little bit ahead of you.
I've seen you with your kids walking through the hallways of Congress.
Yeah, they do like coming up here.
Yes.
Were we walking or were they just running wildly? Because that also happens.
I think you were trying to discipline one of them in the elevator while your wife was trying to handle the other 2, if I remember correctly.
That sounds about right. You know, and once again, she is shouldering more of the load than I am. But yeah, the third is a game changer. Are you finding this out?
The third's a game changer because when we had 2, you could plausibly tell your spouse, hey, I have to go do this other thing.
Yeah.
You got 2, and that's like manageable, right? When you have 3, that just becomes absolutely not. And so when I do events, evenings or weekends, the question now to me is like, which 1 or 2 are you taking?
Yeah.
And so we now structure my event schedule around, are they something I can bring Teddy or Grace to?
Right, and that's a real thing. I mean, because, you know, not just the schedule up here, which I don't think people know the schedule up here. We're scheduled in 10 to 15 minute increments. It is go, go, go from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. And that's one job because you're only here a finite amount of time.
Right.
Then you go home and you're home a finite amount of time. And so it's go, 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 go. And when you've got the kids, you want to try and be a part of their life. And also, if you've got a spouse that works full time, just life creeps in. And so, I mean, you're with the young kids. How are you handling that, taking them to events?
I really borrow from my mom's advice. My mom built a career in science when I was growing up. She had 3 kids as well. Her husband, my dad, was working full time as a doctor. And she was ruthless about prioritization. And she always used to say to us, I just only care about 2 things. I care about the quality of the science I'm doing, and I care about my kids. And everything else is tied for last place. And so for me, I really try to borrow that mentality and just think, I care about my family and I care about the quality of the representation, and every other thing that I might be on my plate, even if I want to personally do it, even if I think it's interesting or cool, it's tied for last place.
That's a really great way to say, I love that, ruthless about prioritization. Of course, I was raised by an elementary school art teacher, so it was far more emotional, but feels good. But you know, but still, it worked.
My mom loved to garden, and she and I would go out in the springtime and we would plant a garden every year, and every summer that garden would die because it just was not one of my mom's priorities.
Yeah.
And I always think about that. I'm like, what are the plants that are not gonna sprout because it's just not a priority for me? It's my kids and it's the representation.
No, I think that, I mean, when you're in this job, I think that's, you know, I'm finding that out in this position. You've got to have that prioritization, and what else do you allow to come in? And saying no is hard, but no is an answer.
Yes.
Okay, so totally pivoting, but maybe on the ruthless prioritization. Mom's a scientist. You went into the military.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that, because I mean, you were not just in the military. You had some really cool experiences and big jobs in the military. Tell me a little about what's going on there.
It was 2 things. one, my grandfather was a Marine. Mm-hmm. Now, he joined the Marine Corps in 1942, 17-year-old, skinny, poor Jewish kid. His parents, my great-grandparents had fled the pogroms in Ukraine to come here. And he walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office at the depths of World War II. Marine Corps was losing that war in the South Pacific at the time. And they needed every rifle they could get. And instead of kind of bundling him off, they sent him to Purdue to study biomedical engineering because he did really well on an academic test they gave him. And I think about that constantly because this was a time when Jews were being annihilated in Europe. And the United States government took this 17-year-old kid and said, "We think you're smart, we're going to give you an opportunity." And he ran with it, became a very successful scientist. He always felt a debt to the Marine Corps because they had invested in him. And I grew up with a whole lot more privilege than he ever had, but felt like it was time when we were fighting our war in Afghanistan to pay that back. So there was a bit of a family tradition there, but there was also a sense of like, I wanted to do something hard and risky, and this was the hardest, riskiest thing I could think of, and so we went right into infantry. I was a commander of a platoon in Afghanistan and then a commander of a reconnaissance mission in Panama in 2014. Loved the Marine Corps. Best decision I ever made was joining the Marine Corps. Came back home and wanted to go in the private sector, do work in the business world, but also wanted to have some aspect of my life be public service still. And so I ran for city council in Newton and found that I actually really loved that job. Did that for 5 years.
Yeah, so you were on the local government level first.
Best level of government in America.
I was in the state senate, so not
Second
quite
best
there.
level.
But I love that, and I don't know about you, it informs my service here, because when you're a state legislator or you're a city councilman, you have no choice but to have your hands in the dirt. Right? You've got to be on the ground level. People have got to have your cell phone number. They have to know that you're going to respond, and I bring that here.
100%.
As well, which is,
we are maniacal about relationships with local and state officials and about constituent services. When I first ran for office, knocked 14,000 doors, like post-it notes for every single person with my cell phone number, and that mentality gets embedded, I think, in the way that I represent now. Obviously, you can't knock doors with 800,000 people, but we try to recreate that finger on the pulse through town halls, Zoom town halls, telephone town halls, etc.
Yeah, no, I think it's so funny. I mean, that's exactly when I was running for the state senate. You've got that far. Yeah. I was so crazy about it that if I didn't meet someone at the door or they were undecided, I hand wrote them a postcard after every time. I would go home and I would stay up at night and I would handwrite little postcards and send them to them after we met.
It works. I tell high school and college students that all the time, like, delete Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. I promise you, you're not winning votes there. Go out there and knock doors and have one-on-one conversations with human beings.
That's exactly right. We'll delete it after you watch this. And then I think that's exactly right. It's a personal connection that matters so much.
So can you tell me what this is?
So we got a bourbon right now that is a really approachable bourbon. You told me you're a Scotch drinker. And I find that sometimes Scotch drinkers don't love bourbon, so I want to go something approachable. To be a bourbon, and this is why we love bourbon in Kentucky, it's the only federally regulated spirit. So it's American spirit. To be a bourbon, you do not have to be made in Kentucky. 95% of the world's bourbon is made in Kentucky, 100% of the good stuff. But you have to be made in America. You have to be at least 50% corn. You have to be aged in a new charred white oak barrel for a minimum of 2 years. And you've got to come off the still, I think no more than 160 proof. And you have to be bottled at no less than 80 proof. Okay. So the bourbon we're drinking today is actually an 80 proof bourbon. And so I thought it might be an approachable one. Put an ice cube in it. I think that when you put that ice cube in it, one of the bigger ice cubes, it kind of opens it up a little bit. But what do you think so far?
I'm enjoying it. And as we were talking about before, I have a soft spot for bourbon because my dad is a bourbon drinker. And so I grew up with Jim Beam in the house as part of the evening ritual. And not for me, for him.
Yeah.
And at one point, my dad said that he wanted to drink a more expensive spirit than Jim Beam, and so my mom said, "All right, we'll do that, but you've got to be able to pass a blind taste test to prove that you actually have the palate to appreciate it," which he failed. He had no conception of the difference, and so he stuck with Jim Beam for the duration.
Good, I tell people this about bourbon all the time. Bourbon is, you gotta think of bourbon like you think of wine. And you might like a Merlot, you might not. You might like a Cab, you might not. White wine, or whatever, right? Bourbon, there's a lot of different flavors, there's a lot of different aging process, different ingredients. As long as it's 50% corn, a lot more can go into it. And so the best bourbon is the one you like the best. And the way to drink it is the way you like to drink it. Like, that's the way to drink bourbon. And you can find bourbon snobs out there all the time, like, "Oh no, you need to get this year and this age bourbon, and you can taste the honey and the tobacco." Fine. Like, if that's your palate, enjoy it. But let somebody else enjoy it just for what it is. And if Jim Beam at night is what gets you through, man, that's the best bourbon out there. So cheers to your dad. One final question before this has been a fascinating episode of Behind the Scenes with Bourbon. I mean, I love your experience. I'm going to take ruthless prioritization with me. Last one, we ask a lot of people. The first concert you went to, the last concert you went to.
First concert, I think it was Dave Matthews Band.
Nice.
High school friends, and in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Last concert I went to, I mean, it's been years since my wife and I would go to a concert of our own accord, but probably the Sesame Street concert that we took Teddy to.
Yep.
Where we jammed out pretty hard.
Yep.
So
there is light at the end of the tunnel, though, I promise you. Because I've been to the Sesame Street concert. I've been to like the Junior Disney Live thing.
yes.
But the last concert I took my older kids to was Green Day. They're still out touring. And I was really surprised. My son wanted to go. I was really excited about it. I didn't, I liked them a long time ago, but wouldn't necessarily just go on my own, right? And
you grew up with.
Yeah, right. But I was shocked. Tons of energy, great live show. They were playing at a festival in Louisville, and a great festival band. Like their songs are short, they're energetic. They powered through an hour and a half set, and it was great.
I would see that. I'm also would love to see the Avett Brothers. I would love to see Jason Isbell. Some of these Americana singers.
I love Jason Isbell.
Yes.
I've seen him several times.
Is he good live?
He's fantastic live.
That's what it seems like. I've seen the YouTube videos, but it's hard to get it.
I mean, we are getting to watch a master at the top of his craft at work.
Yes.
When you go see Jason Isbell, he understands beautiful songwriting. He understands great music, great tone, great. I mean, he is a musician's musician who also, I think any fan can go and appreciate.
Morgan, would you like to go to a Jason Isbell concert with me?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I thought you did right. Yes!
We'll bring the wives.
Right, I mean, this is there, so we'll do it. When it comes to DC, we're gonna do it. Maybe we can give him a tour of the Capitol.
In return?
Yeah, in return, yeah. So, perfect. We're going to Jason Isbell. We will report back on the next Behind the Scenes with Bourbon about the Jason Isbell concert. And Jake Auchincloss, the Marine from Massachusetts, the son of a scientist, the grandson of brave immigrants coming over here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Cool, definitely. I love Jason Isbell live. I've seen him outdoors, I've seen him indoors.